and I work seasonally here at Gertens in the birding department. And tonight we're going to be discussing hummingbirds and orioles, because now's the time of year when you should be getting your feeders out, you should be making your nectar, you should be having your grape jelly on hand. And so what we're going to be doing in the course of this is feel free to, if you have any comments, let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. Terry is running the camera for us, and she'll be asking some questions if we're not getting enough feedback from any of you. But first of all, let's just start out with hummingbirds. There's only two continents that you can find hummingbirds, and that's North America and South America. And the only hummingbird we really have, sadly, is the ruby-throated hummingbird. Now, occasionally we'll get the rufous hummingbird, which is a coppery color. They get a little bit off track. They're not one of our residents in the summer, though. So May 1st, a lot of people say that's the time that you should have your feeders out. I put mine out a couple days ago because some people have reported they've got some coming. It's really important to me that you get the right hummingbird feeder. And a lot of people ask this question, what is the best feeder to get? I'll show you a few that we have here at Gertens and what my favorites are. This is bar none my favorite feeder. Why? First of all, because it's got perches. As you can see, it's got a place where they can land. Now, hummingbirds can't walk. They have a hard time. They got very weak feet, but they can grab onto perches. So everybody seems to really like these cute decorative feeders where they flit around, and I get that. It's really nice to see. But the important part is that they need to rest. And so the most important time to have your hummingbird feeders out would be right around that first week of May. Have lots of nectar prepared, and then of course the end of the summer towards fall, because those are the times where they're really fueling up. Now, hummingbirds, when they come back, they're making an incredible journey. They fly nonstop 500 miles, and that's 500 miles nonstop. They don't fly on another bird's wings. That's an old wives' tale. So make sure that you have fueling stations ready for them. The reason I like this one so much, it's inexpensive. It's got the red on it, and it also has an ant moat, which a lot of people say, well, what's the deal about an ant moat? Why should we have an ant moat? The reason you want an ant moat is if you're putting it on a tree and you're hanging your feeder on a tree, fill this with water, because many ants come down the branch and they want to get into the food ports because that's sugary for them, and ants love that. So make sure you put water in there. I had a customer that came in about 5 years ago, could not believe what she told me, and she was very innocent about it, but she said she has a hummingbird feeder with an ant moat and she puts Roundup in it. And she could see the look on my face, and she put her hands up to her face and said, why, what's wrong? Well, you don't need a chemical in here to kill ants. Not only that, if it dripped, it's going to kill the hummingbirds, it's going to kill anything below. And my chickadees like to use this as a drinking cup. So water will kill the ants. Now, if you don't have an ant moat built into your hummingbird feeder, we sell them here. And again, it's just you take a hook and you hang that on the branch, and then you take the hook that the ant moat comes with and you hang your hummingbird feeder below it. Again, filling it with water. Now, everybody says, well, you got to have red. You have to have a red feeder. Well, red is the preferred color for hummingbirds, but they also love orange. That's why a lot of times people see hummingbirds going to an oriole feeder, because if you've got an orange oriole feeder out there, hummingbirds will flock to that just to look and see what's on. But if you've got a feeder such as this, okay, no red on there. So people say, well, I'm not going to get a feeder like this because there's no red. Or I've got to put red coloring in here. Now, we sell the colored nectar. It does not have red dyes in it, but I don't like it. And to me, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, thankfully for the past 5 years, they've been all over Facebook now begging people, do not use any coloring. Just use cane sugar and water. And the recipe is very simple. It's just boiling 4 cups of water in your microwave or on the cooktop, take it off, and then put a cup of sugar in there. Mix it, cool it, put it in the fridge. It lasts 2 to 3 weeks. Okay.
Okay, Bonnie, we do have a question. Dave asks, I heard that people shouldn't put honey in their feeders because it throws off their sensory. Any truth to that?
You should never, ever give hummingbirds honey. They just showed a picture in Care 11, Grow with Care, and I just looked at that on Facebook this morning, and some woman had a hummingbird in her hand, and the tongue of the hummingbird was out, and the hummingbird was dead because the honey stuck to its tongue. So you don't want to use anything like that, even though it's sweet. Even if you mix it, you want to use cane sugar, just regular cane sugar, not beet sugar, not brown sugar, not powdered sugar, just regular cane sugar. It's very inexpensive, and that's all the hummingbird needs.
Also, Eileen asks, is it true that you need to hang your hummingbird feeder before your trees are in full bloom so that they can find them?
So that they can climb them?
Find
Or
them.
find them. Well, you don't have to do that, no. I mean, some people just put them on shepherd's hooks that you can use if you've got a hook on your deck. That's not necessary. My big deal on trees is make sure you put them in a shaded area or partially shaded area. Otherwise, if it's in full sun, you're going to have to change that nectar. You're going to have to clean out that feeder and change the nectar on hot, humid days, every 2 to 3 days. If it's in, like we've been getting the kind of weather we have now, the 60s or 70s, every week. Yes.
Another question, that is, how often should we clean the feeders, and what's the best way to clean them?
Yeah, well, as I just said, cleaning the feeders, if it's hot and humid, you want to do it every 2 to 3 days. If you see the nectar getting cloudy, that's a big indicator it needs changing. Because these birds are very fragile. Everybody loves hummingbirds, but there's maintenance that goes along with that. So when I clean it, some people use bleach. I don't like to use bleach because if you leave any residue, that's going to kill the birds. If you use soap and water, that can leave a residue. The best way to clean a hummingbird feeder is hot water and distilled vinegar, using white vinegar. And just brush it around, rinse it out, let it dry, and you're good to go.
Okay.
Also, make sure that to save yourself sugar water, I only fill my hummingbird feeder about 1/3 of the way up. If you fill it all the way to the top, unless you're getting dozens of hummingbirds, well, if you're getting dozens, then you ought to have 3 or 4 feeders because they're very territorial. But yeah, just fill it up 1/3 of the way.
Okay. And Valerie is asking, do you know if hummingbirds are in Alaska?
They are.
Oh.
Hummingbirds do go to Alaska. In fact, the rufous hummingbird is that travels the longest distance. A rufous hummingbird, and if any of you want to Google it, they're a coppery orange color. They're beautiful birds. Rarely do we get them here, but they travel the longest distance. They travel about 5,000 miles from their winter grounds up to Canada and Alaska.
Another question, and that is from Eileen. How do hummingbirds mate? Thanks, Eileen.
I thought this might come up.
You did mention that.
I did. And some people say, do they go in midair? And they don't. They might twirl around each other as a mating call with the males and the females. But the male, I'm trying to say this as delicately as possible, because they can't walk, they will perch on a branch and the male will get on top of the female and have a baby. He impregnates her, hopefully, and he's off. He will never help build the nest. He doesn't take care of the eggs. He's kind of a rotter when it comes to birding. The male hummingbird is beautiful to look at, but all male birds in the bird world have the beautiful feathers and the fancy duds. The females don't get it. But yes, and she can have about 4 broods a season.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. And another question, how long do they stay in Minnesota?
So this really varies. Think about in May, coming back early after their long journey. During the summer, you won't see them as much because they're feeding their babies and there's a lot of protein for them. They've got spiders and gnats and fruit flies, all of that they feed to their babies. The critical time to keep your hummingbird feeder out is at least through the end of September. We have had stragglers in Minnesota as late as early December. And the Wildlife Rehab Center, some people caught them and they've taken them to the Wildlife Rehab Center.
Okay. And Erica asks, can I put several hummingbird feeders in my backyard so I see them more often?
Now you can if you get a lot of hummingbirds, it's a really good thing to have multiple feeders because they are very territorial. Hummingbird will sit in a branch for 30 minutes, a male, and if another hummingbird comes, he zips down. They can dive at 60 miles an hour, so you can imagine how fast they are. If you're going to get multiple hummingbird feeders, put one on one side of the deck, one on the other side of the deck, and maybe one in the front yard, so there are multiple feeders for them.
And Sheila is asking, why does my hummingbird why doesn't my hummingbird like my red mandevilla? I thought they like red flowers.
They do. I'm surprised. Now,
Yeah.
you don't, because anything that's got a tubular or a trumpet-shaped flower, they really run to. So planting the right type of annuals, such as cardinal flower, bee balm, some of the black and bloom that we sell here, the salvia that we sell in annuals during the summer, they go like hotcakes, so get them early. But anything with the petunias, a tube-shaped flower, a trumpet-shaped flower, they like. Why? I don't know, Sheila. I don't know what you're doing. Since you're a friend of mine, I'll have to talk to you about that, but I have no idea why they won't go to your mandevilla.
Another question is, so they love the red flowers, orange, as you had mentioned. What about other plants? Do they need those? Do they need nesting material?
They do. They don't need nesting material. They do their own nest with using spider webs. Their nest is about the size of a ping pong ball, and they usually have about 2 eggs that they have, and they're the size of a little white jelly bean. So they make their nests all on their own. But if you plant flowers that attract them, the reds, the oranges, the purples, and even blues, now some people say pink is also attractive to them, and you have just, let's say you're on a deck, get a container pot of those types of flowers. And in our annual department, they'll be happy to choose the right ones for you.
And another Erica asks, how fast do their wings actually
Beat?
Yes.
They beat 53 times a second. So think of that. And I know, Terry, you and I were talking about, do they really make a figure 8 with their wings? And they do, because that's how they maneuver. They're the only bird that can hover. It's like a helicopter. Think of it like that. It can hover. It can go backwards, forwards, up and down. And also they can go upside down. And some people have gotten worried because they'll find a hummingbird that's upside down. If it's a very cold day, they go into what's called torpidity. They go into torpor. And that means they shut their system down completely. Now, when it warms up, it takes them about an hour for them to come out of it. So that's a time when predators can nail them. But if you see a hummingbird upside down, they're just conserving energy. And it's usually when it's very cold or at night when they're sleeping.
And how do they sleep?
They usually just hook onto a little branch, something dense. But if you see, you'll rarely see a nest in the tree unless you've seen hummingbirds buzzing around, because the nest is so tiny. But they know where they're going. They are not capped. They don't go into houses. If anybody ever tries to sell you a hummingbird house, it's a scam. There is no such thing as a hummingbird house. So they make their own little nests. So think about that, and just if you've got the right trees around, they usually make their nest into a fork-shaped area, and they'll tip the nest down so water runs out of it so that the babies don't drown.
And as a matter of fact, Erica says, where might I find a hummingbird nest? I've only seen 2 in my life. You just talked about that. And also, we have a question regarding Orioles. Do oranges really work?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, in all the years that I've had Orioles, I put oranges out. They end up shriveling up. Now, house finches like them, but when it gets hot and muggy, oranges will shrivel up and flies will go on. So some people use mealworms. Now, we sell mealworms here, but these are the dried ones. I haven't had a lot of luck with Orioles eating mealworms. Sometimes people get the live ones, so they're moving around so that the Oriole can see them. To me, the best, bar none, is grape jelly, and it has to be grape jelly because that mimics their natural fruit in the Dominican Republic and Mexico. So it can't be grape jam, it can't be strawberry jelly, it can't be raspberry jelly, it has to be grape jelly. And we usually go through about 3 jars of that a summer. If you get a lot of Orioles, and the males are always the first to arrive, waiting for the females, you're not going to get as many in the summer because, again, they're feeding the babies, and they're one of the first migrants to leave the state. But they'll bring their juveniles to your Oriole feeder. The Oriole feeders I love are the ones like this. They got a little shelter. This is recycled material, and it's got 2 cups in here. So 2 little cups that you can put grape jelly on. The spikes, I've just pulled those off because it gives more room for the Orioles to sit. And oranges, like I said, I haven't had much luck with oranges, but you certainly can give it a try. I mean, that's the whole thing. Some Orioles love them. Some of my neighbors say, oh no, they love my oranges, or they love mealworms. Not the Orioles I get. They like grape jelly.
Is there more than one kind of Oriole?
There is, and they're rare to see, but we get 3 Orioles here in Minnesota. We get the Baltimore, which is the most common, the black with the tangerine wings that are just magnificent. Again, the males, the females are rather drab. Then we also get the bullocks, and we get the orchard. And if you want to Google what they look like, the bullock and the orchard, just Google the colors of them. The orchard Orioles got more rusty color, rusty and black colors to them.
Okay. Sheila asks, how often should I change grape jelly?
Well, Sheila, when it rains, it's going to get watery. Now, I still see Orioles go into the cups when it becomes almost like nectar for them. If you see ants in it, if it's getting too clumpy, then you probably want to change it. That's my only suggestion. I mean, when the cups are empty, put new jelly in.
Okay. Dave asks, how do you keep birds in general from hitting your windows? And can Bonnie, the bird lady, demonstrate any bird calls for us?
Dave, you're killing me. No, but I can tell you, hummingbirds have a little squeak, a little cheep, cheep, cheep that they make as they buzz by you. And, of course, you can hear their wings. How do you keep them from hitting your windows? It's really tough. Dave knows that a duck hit my window and broke the glass when it left the pond. I've got streamers. I've had neighbors that say your house looks like a used car lot because you got all these streamers hanging from it. It's really hard, and this time of year, birds get very territorial. They'll see their reflection in the window and they start pecking at it. Use holographic tape, use decals, whatever works for you. And I'm not doing a bird call, Dave, not tonight.
Now, do Orioles like flowers? Are they attracted to flowers?
Yes.
Are they attracted to other plants?
They're attracted to other plants, but that's not their prime source of food. It would be grape jelly when they first come back again, because that's their first source of food. A lot of flowers aren't in bloom when Orioles come back, and a lot of the insects are not coming out of the bark of trees. So until that happens, grape jelly is the best thing to use. And then in the summer, you've got tons of insects for them, and that's what they'll use.
And Jen is asking, do they nest here?
Oh gosh, yes. Orioles? Absolutely.
Okay.
They build a nest that's like a long cup that hangs down. It's beautiful if you've ever seen an Oriole nest. So many people hear Orioles before they even see them. I would highly recommend going onto Google and listening to an Oriole call. They've got a high-pitched whistle that's just beautiful. And when they get nervous, they've got, and I'm sure Dave wants me to do this, but it's like a machine gun sound. So it's a long, almost a growling sound that they make. It's a chitting sound. So they've got two different voices, but their whistle is beautiful.
And JJ is asking, and you had answered this question earlier, but where's the best place to hang a hummingbird feeder?
So the best place, again, I always say you want it where you can see it, because there's so much fun to watch. Get a hummingbird feeder, again, if at all possible, that has a perch. Because in the fall, they're going to sit there for half an hour, 45 minutes. You can get the best videos and the best pictures in the fall, because these are the fueling stations, so they're going to stay a lot longer in the fall as they start to head south. But put your hummingbird feeder on your deck rail. Put it in a tree where you can see it, or where your cats can see it, providing they're inside cats, and they can just watch them. And hang it high enough, about 6 feet off the ground. You don't want it very low, because a lot of people let their cats roam, and they can get picked off, so you don't want to do that.
Okay. And Sharon is asking, where do Oriole feeders go outside? So where's the best place to place one?
Well, I've got my Oriole feeder. I only have one, and I've got that on a hook on the deck rail. And again, where I can sit and watch it. And people go, can I put an Oriole feeder next to a hummingbird feeder? Can I put it next to my seed feeders? Absolutely. Hummingbirds have chased crows and hawks. They're very, very territorial, and they're feisty, so they're not afraid of bigger birds at all.
Okay. Linda asks, and she may have joined a little bit later,
Okay.
what about the orange nectar for Orioles?
No. Same thing. No coloring at all. Now, Orioles are attracted to orange, as we know. So an orange feeder would be good. Or a lot of people, for instance, if you have a feeder like this and there is no red on it, but you're saying, I am not going to put any kind of dye in there or food coloring, yay, that's what we want to hear. But get yourself a red ribbon and tie it on your shepherd's hook or on a tree branch. And a hummingbird up in the trees, if it sees us flipping around in the wind, it'll zip right into it to look. And that's how you can attract them to your hummingbird feeders. Red ribbons are great. An orange ribbon would be great for an oriole feeder. Now we also have nectar feeders for orioles. Not crazy about them. I think so many people feel really bad for orioles because they'll sit on a hummingbird feeder and they try and get their beaks into the ports of a hummingbird feeder port, and they can't. Their beaks are too wide. So we make nectar feeders. Now, I've seen this. I've used probably 5 of them. And when an oriole gets on it, they tip too much. They're not stable enough for my liking. Now, I like this one because it does have purchase. It's also got an ant moult in it. And it's got the nectar ports in here for them to stick their beaks in. Remember, in the middle of the summer, though, you're going to start getting yellow jackets. Not honeybees, but yellow jackets that some people say they're bee guards. How do I keep the bees off of them? Do not put anything like WD-40 or Vaseline around the food ports. That can kill a hummingbird. And it's not good for an oriole either. But some people have told me if you put a little bit of mint extract around the port, not in it, not in the nectar, but around the food port, that keeps the yellow jackets off of it. And most birds can't smell, but hummingbirds have unbelievable eyesight, and they can see iridescent colors. So you'll see a hummingbird, the male, ruby-throated, you'll see the bright red, but if he's in the dark, it'll be black. Okay, so if we've got any other questions, or any of you have any more comments or questions, we're going to continue this on. We'll answer your questions, just keep it going, and please come into the store. I'm here every weekend, so feel free to come in and ask me questions. I'll help you with the right feeder. I'll help you on how to make nectar. Make your own nectar. We do sell the bottled, but they don't need it, and this is the way to go.
Before wrapping it up,
Yes.
then, or because you just mentioned making your own
Yes.
nectar, what's the best way to
So
do
here
that?
we go, we'll make it really simple. So you take 4 cups of water, you boil it, not just hot water, but boil it to get any bacteria or anything out of it, anything that's not good for them. Boil the water, take out of the microwave or off the stovetop, put in 1 cup of cane sugar, 1 cup, so it's 4 to 1. Then stir that until it's going to hit the water, the sugar's going to hit the water, it's going to be very cloudy. Stir it until it dissolves, let it cool on the countertop, and then put it in a pitcher or a jar in your fridge. It lasts 2 to 3 weeks in there for pennies on the dollar. So thanks everybody. It's been nice talking to you and answering all your questions.